Hello, New York Giants fans, and welcome to the Big Blue View YouTube channel. As we assess the fallout from the 2024 NFL Draft, one of the primary places, of course, that all of the draft prospects come from is the Senior Bowl. And here to help me look back at the draft and maybe look ahead to even 2025 a little bit is Senior Bowl Executive Director Jim Nagy. Jim, thank you for hopping on again.
Ed, good to see you.
Hey, so you catching your breath a little bit at this point, or you already dive into 2025?
The staff has worked really hard, Ed. We've got like over 600 draftable grades on our board right now. They've evaled over like 1,500 players since January for the group of 5 schools, and I have yet to dive in. I can tell you what positions look deep and which ones look thin, and a handful of names. The nice thing is there are a number of guys that went back to school, so I'm familiar with a bunch of guys, mostly guys we had graded on day 3 that are coming back. But I've got a lot of catch up to play.
Yeah,
these next few months.
It's nice when you can delegate.
You have to. You have to, man. You got to trust your people. They do a great job.
It's really interesting because Joe Shane told us in his pre-draft press conference that the Giants had draftable grades, on 150 kids who, between NIL and COVID years and all of that, 150 kids that went back to school. So that was kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, sounds about right. It's going to be whereas this year was really strong, in my opinion, strong through 4 rounds and then kind of fell off a little bit, especially at certain positions. I think next year is going to stay pretty deep throughout. It should be a deep draft.
Should be interesting. That makes those late round picks even more valuable come 2025 draft.
No doubt. No, I think we saw some smart GMs trying to maneuver and pick up picks for next year and kind of dump some this year.
Yeah, let's not talk about Howie Roseman. At least not on my show. not on my show. That won't make Giants fans happy.
I didn't say Howie.
I did. I know I did. Giants fans can be mad at me for bringing it up, but yeah, that was good stuff by Roseman and other GMs who did that as well. Real quickly, you put out some of the numbers of the Senior Bowl kids that got drafted, and I'll just let you go through, if you want to, some of the data on just the number of your kids that were drafted and all of that, kids that played in your 2024 Senior Bowl.
Yeah, happy for this group of players. We had 110 overall guys go. It's our 4th year with over 100. 110 is the most we've ever had, so that was a record. It was 43% of the draft. That's also the highest number we've ever hit. And we had 10 in the first round, which was big for nowadays. When a lot of these guys have people in their ear telling them to not get hurt and play it safe. And then we had 45 of the top 100. And then the number we're proud of too is that we had 65 go in the first 4 rounds, and the other All-Star games combined had 6. So those were all good numbers for us.
So all of you guys out there who like to do top 100 big boards, just put all the Senior Bowl guys in your big board, and you're a good way toward being right.
I like that.
There you go. Hey, let's talk about the Giants a little bit. Giants had 6 picks. I looked at it. Only 2 of the guys that they picked actually were Senior Bowl participants this year. Let's talk about those 2 guys. Let's talk first about Andrew Phillips, the corner from Kentucky. And just let me preface this, before you tell us what you think of Phillips. That pick has been a little bit confusing for Giants fans, for the simple reason that the scouting reports, the reputation for Phillips is a guy that, and even Joe Shane said he's going to begin at rookie minicamp as a slot corner. And I think the reputation or the thought for the Giants was losing Adoree Jackson in free agency. They need a boundary corner next to on the opposite side of Tay Banks more than they needed a slot guy. So that pick was a little confusing, but I know the scouting community really loves Phillips. So just talk to me about him a little bit.
Yeah, it was both the guys the Giants ended up with from our game. We can talk about all of them. I scouted all these players, but no, those were two of my favorite guys. Really love the Phillips pick. I don't get why people would be down on that pick thinking he's a nickel. There were certainly guys, even guys in our game, that were really nickel-only players. I mean, Andrew can play outside. I mean, that's what I love about him. Someone asked me leading up to the draft, like, where would you play? Where would you start him? Where is he better at? And usually, like, I have a pretty good gut feel on, where I think the guy fits best. I mean, shoot, I could see the guy playing at a high level inside and outside. So he's physical. He can run. He had some great outside reps during our week against some 4-3 receivers, running stride for stride, breaking up, finding the ball, breaking up balls down the field. Just love his play demeanor. He's feisty. He's tough. The coaching staff, loves the makeup of the kid, the competitive makeup of the guy. Thought he had a great week down here, really helped himself, because I do think he was flying under way too many media radars before the Senior Bowl and maybe all the way through. I do feel like he was the guy the league was higher on than the media. I thought he would go somewhere on day 2. Third round seemed like the right landing spot for me personally. That's where I thought he would go. So I just like the makeup of the kid. He's got strength, he's got speed, he's got toughness. I don't see many holes. This last month leading up to the draft is kind of hole poking season, and to me, he's a hard guy to poke holes in.
Maybe the one hole I think some people might poke is about ball production. Am I right about that?
Yeah, but again, sometimes that goes back to, how many times they're targeted and whatnot. Like the tape I watched, I never questioned ball skills. I didn't question a guy that couldn't find the ball and play the football. So sometimes it doesn't always show up on paper, but I never had that as a concern based off the tape.
So there you go, Giants fans. Maybe Phillips will wind up as your outside cornerback as it is. It was interesting that Joe said he would work him out at the beginning in the slot. Maybe that's just as an adjustment period for the kid. But you do believe that Phillips can be an outside corner in the NFL?
I do. Yes, I do.
That would be music to Giants fans' ears. It seemed a little bit. The Giants do have Cordale Flott, who was in the slot last year. So it seemed a little bit like it was a little confusing for Giants fans, because if you read enough scouting reports and you believe what you read, a lot of people thought maybe he was a nickel.
Well, I think there was a lot of when you got into that 3rd, 4th round, 5th round area, the majority of the outside corners, and there were some intriguing ones with size and length and speed, but a lot of them really fell into like the developmental category. A couple of them were speed deficient too, and I think Phillips is ready to play. I think these guys want players that can come in and play right away. I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, Giants fans, it seems like they're always putting the heat on people to produce. So they need to get guys who can play. And Andrew's ready to play. And if Flott can move outside, because he is long. I mean, Flott's a mobile kid. I've seen that kid play since high school. Different body type than Andrew. But now at least you've got 3 corners that can get on the field and play.
Yeah, I think to sum it up, I think Giants fans are just are tired of losing seasons.
You won a playoff game 2 years ago. Try being a Detroit Lions fan like I was growing up.
Oh, geez.
We won one playoff game up until this Dan Campbell regime. We won one playoff game since 1957. I don't want to. Come on now. You went on the road and won a playoff game 2 years ago. Your coach was the NFL Coach of the Year.
Oh, you're preaching to the choir, Jim. Really, because I run this website, and people, how fans are. They get so down on everything so easily, and I tell fans all the time, in the Super Bowl era, you've got 4 trophies.
Right.
You've got 4 trophies. Your
Right.
team's been there 5 times. There's a lot of fan bases, despite whatever's happened recently, there's a lot of fan bases that would trade places.
No question. No question.
All right. So let's talk about the other Senior Bowl guy. Let's talk about Theo Johnson. And I think my biggest question with Theo Johnson is 4th round pick. How ready do you think he is, to make a year 1 contribution?
Yeah, I thought Theo would go in the 3rd, so I thought that was pretty good value. He was our top graded senior tight end going back to last summer. Like from our game, the guys like Ben Sinnott from Kansas State ended up going in the 2nd to the Commanders. He made kind of a nice rise, more a different player than Theo, more of an H-back, versatile fullback type of player. I think this is a great landing spot for Theo. I know that they're still working through stuff with Waller, right?
Right.
Like we don't know what Waller's going to do.
Right.
To me, Theo is a big frame guy. He's got the frame to play in the line of scrimmage. He's a big, easy moving guy down the seam. When they target him down the field, it's when you get excited about him. Unfortunately, they didn't do a ton of that at Penn State. He had 7 touchdowns this year, so that's good production. But and then they've got another one coming out next year who you'll hear a lot about, who will probably go in kind of the same range as Theo did, probably like a fringe top 100 type player who they had to, split some targets with. So I think if he were at a place without another NFL tight end on the roster, his numbers might have looked different. Mm-hmm. But I think he's ready to play. I think he is. I think you've got a guy in the 4th round that you're going to get on the field. If Waller's there, he comes in, he can help you right. But yeah, I mean, you still got Daniel Bellinger, who I think is a good player too. So that would give you 3 good ones if Waller comes back. If not, then he and Bellinger are your 1 and 2, and you can get a lot done in 12 and 22 personnel and things like that. So I think you'll get good football out of Theo next year.
It's maybe not fair. You mentioned Darren Waller, and it's not fair for me to say, what do you think is Waller going to do? Because, you're not connected to that situation really. But I always get the impression that, the season ended for the Giants in the first week in January. And we're now in the middle of May, and Darren Waller hasn't announced a decision yet. Do people in the league look at that and think, he's probably going to retire? He's kind of got 1 foot in it already, and wonder about how committed a guy like that might be?
I can't speak for other people. I know when you start hearing stuff like that, when guys start thinking about it, it usually seems to be close to the end. You usually don't get much more than maybe another year once they start talking about it. Mm-hmm. But again, he owes it. He owes it to the organization to kind of let them know as best he can what he's thinking. I don't think he owes anyone else, but certainly it'd be good if he was on the same page with Joe and Dave's about where his head's at. And again, things can change. He could get to late July and go one way or the other. But I'm sure this has been constant dialogue through the offseason, and that's. Maybe the drafting of Theo kind of tells you maybe where the Giants, think he might be at, and they're covering their bases.
Absolutely. Hey, you mentioned, that you studied pretty much all of the guys that are in the draft class, all of the guys throughout the draft. Giants only had 6 picks. 4 other picks were Malik Neighbors, Tyrone Tracy, Tyler Nubin, Darius Muasau, the linebacker out of UCLA. Just tell me, out of that group, who did you really like? Who really got your attention?
Well, Neighbors is the easy one. Neighbors is a lot of fun to watch. I mean, the run after catch stuff. I'm glad they're getting Daniel Jones, a legit playmaker, which he really hasn't had. So I'm excited for Daniel and see what that could look like for him. Really like Tyler Nubin. He was a guy that we probably would have had here at the Senior Bowl had he not had an injury. Just talking to his agent, he's a guy we offered him 2 years ago, and I want to say I can't remember if he accepted the invite or not, but we offered him 2 years ago, and he decided to go back to school, which to me was a little bit of a head scratcher. I didn't feel like he needed another year of school. But but he didn't test great, which was a little surprising because when you put on the tape, he plays with better range and closing speed than how he ran and tested. But a really good football player. Really like his ability to play, in the deep part of the field and read the quarterback and break and make plays. And he'll come up and run alleys and get people on the ground as a tackler too. So he's an all-around safety. So I liked him. We liked Musa late. We definitely would have invited him. We had a couple linebackers fall out. There is a point where we can't. The league doesn't let us invite Shrine Bowl players after a certain date, or he would have been a guy that we kind of circled back on. And then who was the other guy that they picked? I'm trying to remember.
Tyrone Tracy, the running back.
Tyrone. Like we liked Tyrone. He was kind of a guy that got hot late in the fall. Like really like December is when teams really were. It took like the entire fall to teams to get caught up on that eval. Us as well. We were definitely behind the game with Tyrone Tracy. But yeah, good player. I can see why they drafted him. Kind of a cool play history with the player, and big physical guy, good tester. So thought that was a good pick. Add him to that mix. They've got kind of a nice competitive room there with Gray and some of the other guys, and kind of let the best man win.
Yeah, I was going to say with Tracy, his first year as a full-time running back at that level. And it was interesting to me, if you can comment on this, to me, he looked really comfortable, really kind of natural as a running back. I was a little bit surprised at how natural he looked, being handed the ball.
Yeah, no, that's when we started watching him, because his name popped up from a couple teams hit us up about him. We started watching him. I'm like, man, you would never guess. You would never guess that this guy is a first-year full-time running back when we watched him. So I agree.
Yeah. So, the one thing you mentioned Daniel Jones, and obviously the Giants had the quarterback decision to make. All the reporting was that they made a big offer to move up for Drake May, that, and New England said no. Giants chose to pass on the other guys, on J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, if you want to put them in that mix, at 6. You probably should, since they all went in the top 12.
Right.
Are you at all surprised that Joe passed on quarterback, or do you still think there's a belief in Jones?
Not surprised. Not surprised he did it, but I'll say this, and maybe I'm a Daniel Jones apologist or something. I'm not trying to be. Yes, he played in the Senior Bowl. I'm not trying to be biased that way. I kind of look at all these guys differently than a lot of fans. Like if Daniel Jones was like your brother or your son or your nephew, or like, you're one of your best friends, right? Would you really look at the situation and be harsh on Daniel Jones, or would you be harsh on the situation the Giants have kind of put him in? And to me, I'm in the latter camp. I mean, he's had below average, to be nice, below average offensive line play, right? Like everyone, I hear people bagging on Daniel because of his lack of durability. Well, every time I see the Giants in a primetime game, this guy is completely under siege and getting his ass kicked back there. So it's hard to stay healthy when you've got, 320-pound men teeing off on you. And then he hasn't had any playmakers. Saquon Barkley was banged up all the time. He never had a consistent run game. I mean, rattle off the receivers he's played with in his time in New York. Has he had a guy that can go make a play for him when he needs a guy to go make a play? So it's again, and they won a road playoff game a couple years ago with him. So I would love to, if they get the line short up and the line plays well and he's protected well and he keeps getting hit and keeps getting hurt and keeps fumbling, well, then that's on Daniel Jones. And if Malik Neighbors is, what we think he is, and Daniel Jones can't get him the ball, and then it's on Daniel Jones and it's Daniel's fault. I just think there's been a lot of contributing factors to where Daniel's at his career right now. And 2 years ago, when he did stay healthy and they played their best ball, they went on the road and won a playoff game. So that front office and Brian's in a tough spot. We don't need to go too far. I was in a similar situation in Kansas City with Matt Castle. We had a year where, we thought if we were good enough around Matt Castle, we could win a lot of playoff games. And There was one year, a second year we were there, we went from 4-12 to 10-6. We won the division. Matt went to the Pro Bowl. He threw 27 touchdowns. We felt good about it. The next year, Matt gets hurt like week 7. We play half the year with Tyler Palko and a couple other guys at quarterback. We fire our head coach halfway through the year. We play with an interim head coach, and we still finished 7-9.
Mm-hmm.
So we're like, okay, we don't need it. And this was the draft with Russell Wilson and Tannehill and RG3 and Luck and all those guys. We decided not to draft a quarterback, and then we come back the next year and the wheels fell off, and we were 2-14, and we all lost our jobs. So I kind of feel it's not the same exact situation, but like if you look at both situations, it was a really tough call for the GM in Kansas City when I worked there, and I'm sure it was a very tough call this offseason for Joe Schoen on what exactly to do here. But again, getting Neighbors and hopefully getting a couple pieces on the offensive line, Daniel will be able to stay healthy and they'll play some good football.
Yeah, I mean, part of it always has to be whatever quarterback you draft that high in the draft, you're sort of putting your future, you're putting your job status, you're putting your franchise in the hands of this guy. So you better be sure that this is the guy that you want. And I suppose if there wasn't complete agreement, then you don't make that move.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And there wasn't, these quarterbacks were all seen, talking to guys around the league. I mean, there's a lot of variance, even on those top 6 quarterbacks that went in the top 12 or whatever that number. Yeah, it was 6, right?
Right.
There was a lot of variance on those guys.
I'm curious, I have to ask you, as you said, your staff has been diving into the 2025 class and you haven't done a whole lot yet, but just look ahead to 2025, look ahead to the quarterback class a little bit, if you would. Just initial impression. Do any of the guys in the 2025 class, would they crack that top 6 right now?
It'd be close. Carson Beck would have received a Senior Bowl invite had he come out this year from Georgia. He was a guy that most teams had day 2 love for around the league. We did too, but he was getting better. Like he was an ascending guy as we went through the season. Does a lot of good things. I just went to their spring game about a month ago and watched him there in Athens. And so, yeah, he would be a guy. I haven't done enough work on Shedeur Sanders to know. I mean, there's so much, hype around that guy. I just got to put my blinders on and watch him. But there, Quinn Ewers is a guy I've seen play live and throw live a couple different times in practices and camps and whatnot. And then there's a lot of names. I mean, you could throw out a ton of names. This is like kind of the new era of where we're at with quarterbacks. I mean, a lot of these guys that for like DJU to, we went over the names the other day. I mean, the board. I mean, there's going to be a lot of household names in college football this year. I think you got to look at like a guy like Jalen Milroe at Alabama. Does he take a jump in year 2 as a starter? What does Riley Leonard from Duke look like, at Notre Dame? I think those are a couple other names. So there's always guys emerge. There's going to be a name or two emerge from this class that puts himself in position to, be a top, top 50 guy by next fall. But yeah, right now it doesn't look quite as strong as this year at the six in the top 12.
This one might make you chuckle, but I do a mailbag every weekend at Big Blue View, and I got a question this week about, are the Giants waiting for Arch Manning? Are they just waiting for Arch Manning? And I was like, you got to be kidding me with that.
Yeah. That's that would be. I know Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll aren't. I know they're not waiting because that's going to be 2 or 3 more years. And
and they might not be around by then if they.
No, nobody would. Not even specific to them. I mean, shoot.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone in that building could be gone if they're tanking for Arch. I'm talking about a 2 or 3 year tank. I mean, that's going to be really ugly there.
Yeah.
For the Giants. So no, I don't think that's happening. As cool a storyline as that would be, getting another Manning in the Big Blue, but man, I don't see that happening.
No, me neither. Jim, thank you very, very much for a few minutes today. Always appreciate the insight and the look back, the look ahead. It's always nice to chat with you.
Well, Ed, thanks for having me on, man. Have a great summer.
All right, you too. Giants fans, thank you as always for listening. Please stay safe out there. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.